So hello everyone, I'm Dr. Derry Keats from Kenga Solutions, and I am, I guess, a geek from way back. And in my company and in my business and in my daily activities, I do a lot of video production, I do a lot of documentation, I do a lot of presentations, I do a lot of content for videos, and everything I do in the business is all done with free and open source software. And on the office side, I make use of Libreoffice. And so as a consequence of being able to make use of free and open source software, I work exclusively on Linux. Everything I do is on Linux, and using, for the most part, free and open source software tools. So as a consequence of that engagement with free and open source software and making use of free and open source software to run my own business, I decided that it would be good for me to take some of the skills that I've developed and make them available to other people wanting to make use of free and open source software tools to run their business or to do some of their daily activities. And so one of the things that I found when I started getting into using free and open source software is that there's not a lot of videos and documentation aimed at the higher end use. These are lots and lots and lots about the sort of low to middle end use of some of these tools, but the kinds of practical, creative things that you can do with them, not always obvious. So I've decided just to take LibreOffice as an example, and also some of the other tools that I'm using, and make some videos about them. So this one is working with icons, including how to break and recombine them using Libreoffice Draw and Impress on Linux, of course, but the same principles work on any platform. So let's get started. Now, if you look at this circle around me here, you'll see it looks pretty plain and vanilla and bland, and you actually don't know what it's about. But if you think about icons, when you add icons, it conveys information. Icons convey information. And so you can see, if you look at these icons around me now, that these icons were probably put together to talk about what? Cybersecurity, because there's a lot of things related to cybersecurity here. If you look down below here, the yellow one is a firewall. If you look at the next one, it's got something to do with passwords. Then there's something to do with viruses and phishing and so on. So this is all about cybersecurity. The icons convey that information without me having to say anything. So this is the value of working with icons. And so there's a number of ways that you can do that. So what I'm going to do first is just briefly, for the people who don't know much about LibreOffice, just mention it. It is a free and open source software office suite, and its origins were in the OpenOffice project, which had its origins in StarOffice, which came from Sun Microsystems. Now, LibreOffice is made up of 5 components. There's a word processing component, there's a spreadsheet component, there is a presentation component, the equivalent of PowerPoint if you're in the Microsoft world. There is a draw component, which is a vector graphics package, and then there is a database. So the components that we are going to talk about and make use of are these two. Impress, which is the presentation application, and Draw, which is the graphics, the vector graphics application. Now, both of them have similar functionalities, but Draw is much better for putting things together and working with the graphics. So I often build a slide for a presentation in Draw and then copy it over into Impress afterwards, just because Draw is easier to work with. Sometimes you can export it as a SVG or as a PNG or as a JPEG and then use it, or you can just simply copy and paste it over. Now, remember what I was saying about icons, just let me get out of this drawing here. So remember what I was saying with icons. So immediately when you see icons, you see that the things are different. There's more information contained in there. What is this about? On the left-hand side, you've got learning, you've got a bird, you've got a camera, you've got the world, you've got the sun, you've got cloud. you can see that there's something going on here. So the icons contain and convey information. Color also, and background and fill can also contain information. And presenting something with icons has a huge impact over and above just presenting the same thing with text. So what we're going to do now, I make use of an icon site called the Noun Project. So icons are effectively, they're nouns. So the Noun Project is a good place to get icons. It's a paid site. It's not for free, although there are some public domain icons there. If you search, you can find them, and you may be able to use them without paying for a membership of the site, but it's relatively cheap. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's around $20, between $20 and $30 a year for membership, and you get access to millions of icons about almost anything. So we'll come back to this site in a few minutes. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to open up LibreOffice Impress with a slide that I've made. In fact, I made this a couple of days ago for a presentation. Obviously, I didn't use lorem ipsum text in my presentation, but you can see that there's some icons used here. And if I just bring this over to if I bring that over to my other screen and press F5 so you can see it full, you can see the icons probably much better here at full screen. And you can see that those icons are meant to convey information. It's something to do with payment. There's a bunch of payment things. There's some cards and some cash, and there's a merchant in a store, and somebody's gone extinct. So there's a story here to be told. So how to bring those icons? How did I bring those icons in here and create this this scenario here? So I've got a blank slide here, a blank slide in case you need it for something. I guess I can delete the text. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my folder that I'm using for this presentation, for this video. And you can see I've got slide presentation here. That's the one that I just showed you. I've got video components, which I'm not going to bother with here, but you can see I've got my folder divided up into SRC, the source files, image, and then images divided up into in and out. And then I've got icons. Now, this is nothing to do with what I want to show you, but I think it's a useful thing to know that it's good to split your folders up into some meaningful way. And for me, I always have an SRC folder, I always have an image folder, and I always have an icon folder for everything I do. So that's just an aside. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go into the icons folder, and you can see that I've got a bunch of icons here. I'm just going to get out of your way for a second so you can see this bigger. And you can see that here is some of the icons I used in the circle that was around me at the beginning. So I'm going to just drag one of those icons in, and there you can see it's on the desktop. And now what I can do is I can right click it and I can choose break. I hope you can see that. So that breaks the icon up into its components. Now you can see I can select any of the pieces. By the way, the icons obviously have to be in vector format. And the Noun project allows you to download your files in the open standard format SVG, which is what I recommend. And it's actually the only thing that you can use. But now that you've split it up, you can actually start changing the colors of things. So you can see that it's split up. Now there's that outer part. So maybe we want to change that outer part to a different color. So let's just, I've got different palettes as well that I use here. So what I'm going to use today is called complementary fill lines, because I've got the colors that I use for different levels of fill and so on. So I'm going to just use the brighter colors there. So I'm going to make the outside one blue. Now you can see that there's these horizontal lines here, horizontal and vertical lines here. I'm going to just select those. Now I can change those. So I've made that one dark blue. I'll make these ones slightly lighter blue. And now I can change the color of the bug inside. Maybe the bug is horrible, nasty virus for a computer. So I'm going to make it red. I'll make its head slightly less red. So what I'm using in the process of doing this is the area. Notice that I'm using the area, and that applies even to lines for the most part. Sometimes you get an icon that's been constructed differently, and you may need to use line colors, but in general, it's the fill colors that you will use. Okay, so now we've made an icon with colors, and now we can group it again. So we right click, we select everything, we right click it, we group it. Now we can hold down the Shift key and resize it how we want. Okay, so now we've got this icon. Now we want to put it inside of a circle, so we just draw a circle of the right size. We don't want any fill in our circle, and maybe we want the outline color to be like slightly gray, and we want the line to be a little bit thicker. And now we can drag that over the icon and resize it a little bit so that it matches the icon. Whoops, don't want to do that. And then we can just align, centered, and align vertically centered. So now we have a little circle with our icon, and then we can type some text next to it, and we can build up. So this is an alternative way, I suppose, to do bullet points. Now, that's basically how we can do icons in a presentation. Obviously, we can make this as complex, and we can bring this together with other techniques, and create things like the curved line with the icons on it, and so on. But all I'm showing you here is how to bring in SVG icons, split them apart, color different components, and turn them into something else. Now, another way, another thing that you can do is you can also make your own SVG icons by recombining icons from different sources. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to just go back to, bear with me for a second. I'm going to close this. Let's just save it in case we want to come back to it later. So what you can also do is you can bring icons together and create a new icon out of them. Now you can do that in the presentation application, which I often do, but sometimes I want to make icons that I want to reuse. So one way to do that is to use LibreOffice Draw. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go up one level in my folders, and I'm going to create a LibreOffice Draw file. Now, I'm using Linux, and I'm using the GNOME desktop, and I have templates. So I'm going to just use a template that I've already created. But if you don't have a GNOME desktop and want to use templates, KDE has templates as well, just more complicated to use. But if your operating system allows you to use templates, I'd create a template first, and then you can use the file system to create the file that you want to use, instead of having to, every time, open the application, figure out what the sizing is that you want, and then save it. It's easier to do it through the file system. So I'm going to create a new document. I think it's in Draw, Draw Square Icons, LibreOffice Draw Square Icons. So I've created that LibreOffice Draw Square Icons file here. Now I'm going to go back to, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make an actual icon that I'm going to be using. So I'm going to just get out of your way here again. So I'm going to go into the Noun project, and so the icon is going to be about this new way of paying called click to pay, where somebody sends you a link, you click the link, and then you can pay somebody from that link. So I'm going to make an icon that represents that. So the first thing I'm going to look for is pay. So typically people will be paying with cards. So I'm going to just use the cards to represent paying. Now you can see I've got PNG as an option and SVG as an option. I'm going to download the SVG file and just save it in my downloads folder for now. And then I'm gonna just look for something like web link. So maybe I want to use, let's use this one here. It's not too overwhelming. So we'll use that one. We'll save it. And then I want a link that represents click. I want an icon that represents click. So I search for click. So what has we got here? Click, tap, tap. I want something that's fairly bold. Maybe this one? I don't know. Let's try it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't matter. This is just for illustrative purposes. Okay, so we save the SVG just into our downloads folder for now. So now I bring up my downloads folder and drag it over here so you can see it. And you can see I've got these three icons here. So now let's open the square file that I've made previously. So here you can see there's a square desktop, and you can see what my size is here if you want. I can go to properties. So you can see I've got it 20 centimeters by 20 centimeters with 1 centimeter margins. Of course, this is vector graphics, so centimeters and that don't mean anything because you can resize it to any size because it's vector. Okay, so now let's go back to, let's just close this one. Let's go back to my icons. I'm going to drag the click icon over here. I'm going to drag the link icon over here, and I'm going to drag the pay icon over here. Okay, so now I want to combine these in some way to represent that click to pay concept. So let's bring this up probably to about that size. We can resize everything later. Then we're going to make the click the link about that size. And then we're just going to bring this down here for the time being. Now we're going to split apart the credit cards. So we're going to break the credit cards. And then we can give them a lighter color so that we can see what we've done here. We want to bring this forward. So we're going to just arrange, bring to front, so that this is in front of the cards. Now there's a number of things we can do once we've broken this apart. We could, for example, if you look back at my previous video on LibreOffice, you'll see that you can actually delete parts of an object once you've split it apart. So I'm using the rectangle to split out, to remove the bits of the bottom credit card, so the link fits into it better. So I'm going to go shapes, subtract. And there you can see that it subtracted the corner of the credit card and made the link sit better there. So now I'm going to break the link, and I'm going to just get rid of these bottom lines here because I want to replace that with the click. And I also want this to be fairly prominent here. So I may just do the same with this with the link here. So I'm going to just draw a little shape here. And whoops, that's a bit too big. And I'm going to just put it here, and then I'm going to select this, and I'm just going to go shapes, subtract. So now I've created a little hole there, but you can still see that it's part of the link. This may be too much boldness here, but it doesn't matter. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to remove a little bit here, and then I'm going to remove a little bit here. So I'm going to just make another little shape here. Yeah, that shape. And I'm just going to draw it here just so I can see what I'm doing. And then I'll bring it up here. And if I click up here, I can rotate it so that the edges are not at the wrong angle. Okay, so now I can click the link and the shape, and I can go subtract. You can see I've made a little space there. Now I want to do the same thing here. So I again draw my shape, like that, maybe. And then I again click up there to rotate it, just so that the edges are not too sharp. And you can see that that's probably okay there, and I just need to bring it down this way a little bit. Maybe just move it a little bit with Alt arrow. Then I select the link and select this, and then I can go shapes, subtract. So now you can see that I've got, I can probably just get rid of these up here as well. Don't think they add anything to the icon. Now I've got this, so I can just move this link a little bit further into the card. Okay. And now I can just make them all the same. Sorry. Let me just bring that back again. Sorry, I just accidentally closed the settings there. So we can do select here, area, color. So this is now one of those that has been done with lines. So we can't use the area to fill it. So we have to choose none, and we have to go to line and change it there. But I'm not going to bother with that because I want them to be black. So I'm just going to go back to those ones and just change those back to black. Now I can combine these in a group. Right-click group. Now I can change the size to make sure that it fits properly on the page. That should be okay. Now I can export this as an SVG. So we select SVG from the file types down here. We call this .svg, and we save it. Okay, I'm going to just save this file. Now I want to go back to our LibreOffice Draw. Now you can see here is the icon that we just created. Now we can go back into our slide presentation. And let me just get rid of that. Now we can go back into our slide presentation, and we can drag this icon in. And, you know, it's quite big, but basically we treat it exactly the same as we did single icon that we dragged down, so we can resize it and do things with it. We can also break it here because it's still just an SVG file. And now, interestingly, despite the fact that in the original source we couldn't use area, because we converted it into an SVG file, the individual objects now can be colored and changed with area. So if you do get an icon that you really want to use, and you can't use area with the original icon, you can always create a new one out of it. And then once you've exported it as an SVG, it takes on those characteristics that you can reuse. So that's it. I think that's not a bad overview of how one can use icons and work with icons in LibreOffice. It's important that the icons are SVG files. It's important that you understand that when you move an icon into LibreOffice, either Impress or Draw, you can just right-click it and split it apart. And then you can work with the individual components, delete them, color them differently, move them around, whatever you want to do. You can also create a new icon, as we just did, or a new icon file, bring icons into it, merge them in different ways, remove different pieces, and re-export them as SVGs. And then you can use those SVGs to create something new. So hopefully that's useful. If you found it useful, please click like and click subscribe, and there'll be more of these. I promise. Have a good day.